There are calls for a boycott of Tim Hortons today amid anger towards franchise owners who are eliminating paid breaks. A meme promoting No Timmys Tuesday has been circulating on social media. This after some Tim Hortons, including locations in Kingston and Cobourg, made the change in accordance with the minimum wage increase. There's also a rally planned tomorrow at the Tim's that was first noted for cutting breaks, located in Cobourg. There are calls for a boycott of Tim Hortons today amid anger towards franchise owners. Our Marianne Dimain is at the corner of Don Mills and Lawrence with more on what's being called No Timmys Tuesday. Marianne.
Hi, Carolyn. Yeah, it's all in protest of those franchise owners outside of the city who have cut back employee hours and other paid benefits in response to the minimum wage hike. So that online campaign, No Timmys Tuesdays, asking everybody to skip their Tim Hortons today and all other Tuesdays after employees in 2 Cobourg Tim Hortons and 1 in Kingston said their employers were cutting back on their hours, paid 15-minute breaks, as well as other paid benefits to make up for the money lost because of the minimum wage hike. Now, Tim Hortons, the company, has said that it does not agree with these franchise owners are doing. In fact, it says that it goes against the company's core values. Now, while this does not go against the Employee Standards Act, the Ministry of Labor says they also don't agree with what's being done at these locations and what's being done for those employees who are basically stuck in the middle. Still, some customers here at Tim Hortons we've been speaking to say they don't plan to have a No Timmys Tuesday. This is what the minister said, and some customers as well.
The minimum wage, I don't believe ever in history has been raised without the business community raising a fuss or concerns. For some businesses to take it out on their workers, however, is completely unacceptable, and it's simply wrong. It's the act of bullies that has no place in this province.
And what do you think about this No Timmys Tuesday? Do you think that will fly?
No, I'm not that familiar with it, but what I've heard, I don't think it'll fly.
And when you look at this busy Tim Hortons drive-through, a lot of people who have either heard about the campaign or not are still coming by here to get their Tim Hortons. They say at the end of the day, they need their coffee, and they also understand that this is not a widespread issue that's happening at all Tim Hortons locations. It's only those select few franchise owners who are doing this at some locations. They are, of course, sympathetic with some of those workers who are impacted, but again, it is not changing their habits this morning. As for what's happening at those 2 Cobourg locations where employees say that their benefits are being clawed back, and a protest is actually scheduled for tomorrow in support of those employees there. Carolyn, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Marianne. Welcome to the morning show. There are calls for a boycott of Tim Hortons today amid anger towards franchise owners. Our Marianne Dimain is at the corner of Don Mills and Lawrence with more on what's being called No Timmys Tuesday. Marianne.
Yeah, Carolyn, they're hoping that people will avoid lining up for drive-thrus like this one here outside of this Tim Hortons and skip that morning coffee from Tim Hortons because it's all in protest of several franchise owners outside the GTA who apparently cut back some paid employee breaks as well as hours in response to the minimum wage hike. Now, No Timmys Tuesday has been circulating online again in response to some employees at 2 locations in Cobourg as well as 1 in Kingston who said their employees have cut back on their paid 15-minute breaks as well as some paid benefits because of the minimum wage hike. Of course, that does not apparently violate any Employment Standards Act, but Tim Hortons, the company, has said that they do not agree with what these franchise owners have done at those specific locations. It also says that it is isolated to those incidents and goes against the company's core values. We have been talking to customers this morning who so far have been saying no thank you to the No Timmys campaign.
I don't know, probably not. I like my Timmys in the morning.
If a company can't afford it, then they can't afford it, you know, so I can't really speak for a company.
So apparently a lot of people are still coming to get their Tim Hortons this morning. They realize that it's not across the board. This is not a company-wide thing that's been happening for all employees who work for Tim Hortons. They realize that it is just at those locations and just certain franchise owners who have started this. As for the Ministry of Labor, they say they have more enforcement officers to investigate any complaints relating to violations they think might be because of the minimum wage hike. And there is also a protest scheduled for one of those Cobourg locations where the employees have been complaining about this, scheduled for tomorrow. I'll send it back to you, Carolyn.
All right, thank you, Marianne. There are calls for a boycott of Tim Hortons today amid anger towards franchise owners. Our Marianne Dimain is at the corner of Don Mills and Lawrence with more on what's being called No Timmys Tuesday. Marianne.
Yeah, and it's hoping customers will say no to caffeine from Tim Hortons today and all other Tuesdays. But you can see with the cars filing into this drive-through behind me here, a lot of people are still getting their caffeine fix this morning. Still, organizers of the campaign that was online called No Timmys Tuesday, as you mentioned, are hoping more people will be on board because it's all in protest of some franchise owners outside of the city, specifically at 2 Tim Hortons locations in Cobourg and 1 in Kingston, where employees say they have been getting cutbacks for employee benefits, including paid 15-minute breaks and other things like employee hours. Now, this is not a violation of the Employee Standards Act, but Tim Hortons, the company, says it does not agree with what these franchise owners are doing to its employees in response to the minimum wage hike. It also says that this goes against the company's core values. This morning, we were talking to some customers who say they still plan to get their coffee, though the Ministry of Labour had this to say about what's been happening at these locations.
In the province of Ontario, you shouldn't work 35 and 40 hours a week and continue to have to live in poverty. That simply isn't on for Ontario. It's not on for this government, and it certainly is not on for the Premier or myself as Minister of Labour.
Now, the Ministry of Labour also says it has more enforcement officers to investigate any complaints relating to the minimum wage hike and any possible violations of the Employee Standards Act. As for a lot of the customers who have been filing into this Tim Hortons locations, they either did not hear about this campaign or heard about it but still plan to get their coffee this morning. They say they understand that this is an isolated incident to just those certain locations and not across the board at all Tim Hortons locations or throughout the company. Still, there is a protest planned outside of that location in Cobourg, where a lot of the employees have been dealing with this issue. I'll send it back to you, Carolyn.
All right, thank you, Marianne. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. There are calls for a boycott of Tim Hortons today amid anger towards franchise owners. Our Marianne Dimain is at the corner of Don Mills and Lawrence with more on what's being called No Timmys Tuesday. Marianne.
Yeah, Carolyn, a lot of people who have been coming through this drive-through on Don Mills have either heard about it or didn't hear about it, but still chose to get their coffee. But just a few moments ago, we told one man about it. He was already in the line to get his coffee and then popped it in reverse and decided to go to another coffee shop nearby. He says he agrees with this campaign and does not agree with what some franchise owners are doing to their employees outside of the city as a result of this minimum wage hike. In particular, 2 locations in Cobourg and 1 in Kingston, where employees say their companies have cut back on their hours, as well as 15-minute paid breaks and some paid benefits because of the wage hike. Tim Hortons company, though, says that these are isolated incidents with only certain locations owned by franchisees, I should say, and that it does not go with their company values. They don't agree with what's happening there, and not only that they don't agree, that it's not right what's happening to the employees. The Ministry of Labour also agrees that it is not in line with what the company should be doing, but it is happening. So this is what some people outside of this Tim Hortons this morning said about that No Timmys Tuesday campaign.
No.
How come?
Because I like Tim Horton.
I think it's ridiculous.
How come?
Because I need my Timmys every day.
So he says he needs his Timmys, but again, just a few minutes ago, we did see one guy who said he's going with this campaign and decided to back out of this drive-through and go to another coffee shop nearby. As for that location, or one of the locations anyway, in Cobourg, where the employees have complained about what's been happening there is a protest planned for tomorrow. I'll send it back to you, Carolyn.
There are calls for a boycott of Tim Hortons today amid anger towards franchise owners. Our Marianne Dimain is at the corner of Don Mills and Lawrence with more on what's being called No Timmys Tuesday. Marianne.
Yeah, Carolyn, they're hoping people will not make a stop at Tim Hortons today or any other Tuesday in protest of those locations in Cobourg and in Kingston, where employees are apparently getting their paid benefits scaled back, like their breaks and some benefits as well as some hours because of the minimum wage hike. But behind me, you can see a lot of cars still lining up to get their Tim Hortons fix this morning, whether they know about it or not. They still want to get their coffee. Still, not everybody is in agreement with what has been happening at those locations, including Tim Hortons, the company itself, which says those franchisees who own those locations are actually going against the company's core values. They also say they don't agree with what's happening there. Neither does the Ministry of Labour, though what they are doing is apparently not in violation of the employment employment laws. We did talk to some people who are out here getting their coffees this morning, including one man who changed his mind, and this is what they had to say about this No Timmys campaign.
Honestly, no. Because I don't see how that's really going to make an impact. I mean, everybody has a right to run their business how they see fit.
I don't think it will. I mean, that's part of people's routine, though. If, yeah, also drink it.
It sucks when, you know, you get a leg up and somebody takes it out from underneath you. So, yeah, I'm boycotting.
So you were going to go get coffee and you're changing your mind?
I am, absolutely.
So we found the one customer who was following with that No Timmys campaign. Again, Tim Horton says it is not at all of its locations. It is not across the board. It is just at certain locations where those owners have decided to do this because of the minimum wage hike. The Ministry of Labour also says that it will have more enforcement officers to investigate any complaints relating to the Employment Standards Act to see whether anyone's been violating the standards because of the minimum wage hike. As for one of those locations in Cobourg where employees have been complaining about all of these scaled back paid benefits, there is a protest planned for there tomorrow. I'll send it back to you, Carolyn.
All right, thank you, Marianne.